Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Norma Juarez, and I am a proud alumna and staff member in UNC's Alumni Relations Office. Thank you all for joining us today for the Alumni Career Panel, Careers in Communications, Marketing, and Graphic Design. Today we will be learning and connecting with fellow UNC Bears working in these industries. Before I introduce you to our panelists, however, I would like to share a couple of housekeeping items with you all. The event is being recorded and it will be available on demand on our website, and I will be sharing that link later in the chat feature, so make sure to open your chat. I also invite you to start building your network by reaching out to our panelists after the event. I will also be sharing their information in the chat. And lastly, I will go off screen after introductions and will return toward the end of the event to provide a quick closing statement. As we highlight the careers of these alumni, I invite students, fellow staff, and faculty to ask questions through the Q&A feature. Now, please help me welcome our panelists. Panelists, can you please introduce yourself by stating your name, title, company, your UNC degree, and by sharing a little bit about yourself? And Alton, we will start with you.
Hello, everyone. Alton Dillard, Northern Colorado, class of '86. I'm the communications manager for the Denver County Clerk and Reporter. I was on the 5-year plan, all 5 years West Campus, West Side, Turner, and Lawrence, and for me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Harris Mackey. I am the global head of content and social at Niantic, probably best known as the maker of Pokemon Go. I was a Bear in 2009, or graduated in 2009, and I'm excited to be speaking with you all.
Thank you, Paris. Jenny?
Hi, my name is Jenny Siegel, and I live in Aurora, Colorado. I graduated from UNC in 2004 with a journalism and mass communications degree and emphasis in telecommunications. I spent my first year on West Campus as well. I'm a West Sider, lived in Harrison Hall, and currently I'm a producer for Altitude Sports, the regional sports network here in Denver, the home of the Colorado Avalanche, Stanley Cup champion, Colorado Avalanche, the Denver Nuggets, and the Colorado Mammoth. I also produce a lot of our original programming. I'm currently producing a sports betting series called You Bet Tonight. During baseball season, I also work as a replay operator for the Colorado Rockies. And during football season, I'm a member of the PR Game Day staff. So very blessed to be working for my hometown teams and love being a Bear. And thanks for having me here today.
Thank you, Jenny. Maurilio?
Hi, everyone. My name is Maurilio Tapia. I graduated from UNC in 2018 with degrees in art, visual communication, and art history. Born and raised in Greeley, so I didn't stay in the dorms, but I lived a couple blocks away anyway, so I'm always around. And right now, I'm working as the bilingual communication support specialist for the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, which essentially means bilingual PR. I'm the point of contact for when it comes to media relations and connecting our journalists and other medias in the Denver community with our curators and spokespersons here at the museum. And aside from my normal duties, I'm also a graphic designer and artist on my own right under the alias Starstorm Tito. So I'm a busy person, and I do a lot in a lot of facets. So it's a pleasure to be here and engaging with students from my old university.
Thank you, Maurilio. And now I will hand it over to Deanna, who will be our facilitator this afternoon. Deanna?
Thank you, Norma. Hey, everyone. My name is Deanna Herbert, and I am the Director of News and Public Relations here at the University of Northern Colorado. I graduated here in 1992, just a few years ago, bachelor's in journalism with an emphasis in advertising. Spent about 25 plus years in the field of communication, doing a lot of different things: marketing, advertising, journalism, public relations, a little bit of crisis and risk communication as well. Worked in newspapers as well as higher ed and public health, but probably the majority of my career there. So really excited to be here today. Truly honored to be able to sit in as a moderator, and I guarantee you I'm going to learn as much from this panel as anybody listening. So super excited to get started. Norma, are we okay to take it away?
You are. Okay.
All right, let's get started with the first question. And this one's going to go to Alton. What experiences, internships, or courses at UNC helped you launch into your career? And then what journey did you take to arrive at your current position?
All righty, and I forgot to mention my major and minor. I was a JMC journalism mass comm major, and then I minored in psychology, which has served me well working 30 years in government. So cannot overstress the importance of internships. I got my first internship through an alumni connection. I was a radio student of Professor Terry Wings, and he put me in contact with Gretchen Ely, who at the time was a producer at KNUS Radio. Now, remember, if you'll notice, I'm the one who's got an 8 leading off his graduation year, so I'm getting towards the end of my career. But the thing I always like to remind, especially our students, is the importance of hustling up that first internship. When I went to UNC, we were still on quarters. So we did not get out of school until like mid-June, like 12th, 13th, 14th of June. And you were competing in the internship market against kids who got out like May 20th. So you really had to be able to hustle. So landed that internship. I had to take 2 buses across town to go to it. And then they're like, well, we want you for 3 hours a day and we want you to help with the filing and stuff. And I'm like, well, no disrespect to administrative assistants. That's not what I'm going to college for. And so by the time that internship ended, I was actually producing actualities on air for the 1984 Olympics. And then I parlayed that internship into a paid internship at 9 News and was able to parlay that one into a 40-hour paid internship at ABC News. It's that first one that you get that really helps pop the cork. And then I graduated into the mid-1980s recession, drove a rent-a-car bus for 3 years, but even in that time, I perfected my elevator speech with everyone from professional athletes to college basketball coaches to national broadcasters to executives from Hewlett-Packard in Fort Collins. So anytime you get a chance to get 5 minutes to sell yourself, maximize that opportunity.
Great advice. Jenny, let's pass this one on to you.
Well, I want to just kind of echo a little bit about what Alton said, those internships. I cannot stress anymore the importance about them. I mean, my courses at UNC were obviously incredibly beneficial. One of the last ones that I took was electronic film production, EFP, and that was huge for me because that really got me ready for what broadcast journalism was like. I got to edit features, we got to shoot stories. It was a really good taste of what was going to be happening in the real world. And when I was a junior, I took an internship with 9 News. I did a summer internship, and I was very lucky to be able to work here in Denver because it was a very competitive internship. So I was really lucky to be able to get that. Again, I was able to work with my hometown teams. It was during the summer, so I did Broncos training camp, worked over with them at Coors Field in the Rockies. So it just taught me a ton. They taught me how to write scripts and how to edit. I cannot stress the skills that I learned at 9 News, how important they were to where I am today. And one fun thing about 9 News, and I'm still very close to a lot of the workers there to this day, Rod Mackey was one of the anchors that I learned under, and he was phenomenal for me. And he knew my strengths were football, baseball, the mainstream sports, but he knew I was not as polished in, say, car racing and golf. So guess what my assignments typically were? To write scripts for car racing and for golf and to edit. And again, I cannot thank Rod more than enough for that because it made me even more well-rounded. And when I graduated in 2004, I won the title of Miss Wheelchair Colorado. So I technically took a year off from pursuing job opportunities, applying for jobs, but I wanted to stay active in the media world. So I took on another internship. So I interned over at WB2 News, and I did that for another summer. And that was another great experience for me. Worked very closely with Chris Riva. He and I still have a great relationship to this day. And again, he made me definitely work outside my comfort zone, which taught me a lot. And then I also made great contacts with Blake Olson while I was working there. And I turned into his producer for a side show that he did called Football Colorado. I produced that with him for about a year and a half. And then how I landed my job at Altitude Sports is the network launched in 2004, and I connected with their CEO at one of the events that I was at, and I cannot tell you how important my connection with Mr. Matt Hutchings. It definitely gave me my foot in the door with them, and I bugged for Mr. Matt Hutchings almost on a weekly basis to see what openings they had and where I could start and how I could start. And unfortunately, with them launching as a new network, they just didn't have a lot of open positions yet, but I did not let that get me down. I still bugged Matt. We talked literally on a weekly basis, and I finally got a call from him about a year after we met, and he said, "Hey, Jenny, it's not a job, but I have an internship for you. Do you want it?" And at first I was like, third internship, I don't know if I want to do that. I want to move out of mom and dad's house. I want to make real money. I do not want to take a third internship. Well, I'm glad I swallowed my pride. I'm glad I did not let my stubbornness get in the way, because I interned there for about 6 months, and then they hired me on as a freelance employee, an on-call employee. And then in November of 2006, they hired me on as a production assistant full-time. And I have climbed the ladder at Altitude since then. And it's been a long journey, but a journey I would not change anything about it. And it taught me a lot about being resilient and the importance of networking and building those relationships, which we'll continue to talk more about in this discussion here tonight. But that was my journey, and I'm very blessed to be what I'm doing today.
I love the persistence. Sometimes you just have to. Paris, how about you?
Yeah, I think I'll echo the internship thing, but I think to add additional layer, I mean, when I graduated, it was at the height of the recession, not the current recession, obviously, but there was a lot of fear mongering about just how hard it was to get a job graduating at the time in which I graduated. And I certainly had a lot of internships. My senior year, I actually had 10 by the time I graduated, but a lot of them weren't necessarily ones that had job descriptions or links for me to apply to. A lot of them were me kind of knocking on doors of local businesses and asking them if I can lend my nascent PR skills to their cause and their business. I also, I'm not sure if it still exists, but at the time I created Bear PR, which was an on-campus PR agency for other college like clubs and other things that they wanted kind of additional PR skills. So I think my story in terms of, pre-graduation was about trying to create my own narrative when it came to job experience. So that was more competitive in the market entering the recession. So after I graduated, I did get an internship at Ogilvy PR, which is probably one of the larger PR firms in the country. And it was a great place to learn how to become a generalist. At a company that size, there's a lot of people to do kind of a similar job. And so you kind of hop around and learn different facets of it. And I was doing traditional media relations when I first started in the workforce. And shortly thereafter, social media really became the way that brands were connecting with their audience and their consumers. Journalists were certainly still valuable, but as opposed to always having to do media relations to get a story out there, you can connect directly with your consumers. And for me, as somebody who didn't really consider himself a really good salesman and pitcher, I kind of raised my hand and asked for the chance to learn this kind of new aspect of communications and media firsthand. And shortly thereafter, the BP oil spill happened. And that was actually a big client for Ogilvy at the time. And they needed a lot of hands learning the conversation that was happening primarily on Twitter. And I kind of jumped in there and kind of learned the ins and outs of social as social grew to be what we know it is today. And since then, I currently live in Los Angeles. I've lived here for the last 10 years, and LA is the land of entertainment. So that's really where I've been focusing a lot of my work on. led social campaigns for Ubisoft and Square Enix, some of their video game titles. I ran social media for Hulu for over a year and a half. I was at an agency leading digital there for the last, or previous to this job, for the last 5 years. And then in February, I started as head of content and social Niantic. And my job here is to really help unify our digital strategy across just our brand presence, as well as the game titles that we represent to be built. So yeah, that's my journey.
Thank you, Paris. Aurelio, you're up.
Yeah, internships are definitely a way for you to learn if you like the job or field that you want to get into. I've definitely had 2 different internships where they're completely in different spectrums. So my first internship started off at a local Latin American art gallery here in Denver called Museo de las Americas. They really focus on, regional and South American and Latin American art as a whole, and the artists. And that is where I got my first glimpse of the marketing and especially the PR side of the marketing world. There I was able to engage and collaborate with multiple vendors, different artists, and also facilitate and create different events for the First Friday events at the Santa Fe Art District. There is where I definitely gained the skills of communication and how communication is important when it comes to dealing with not only your vendors, artists, but just people in general. People communicate in different ways, and especially someone who works in PR, you got to learn and find the ways to communicate with people in the ways that they prefer. And it's amazing for me to learn that aspect of PR. And that internship happened in 2018 as I was graduating, and in 2019, going into 2020, I started another internship at the 18.com, which focuses on soccer news, soccer highlights, and anything really related to soccer. And there I was more of a graphic designer. So there is where I learned kind of like the social media aspect of marketing, different social media tactics, learning the trends of making content that's aligned with memes and current events, and just finding things to engage with, your consumers, especially our consumers being so young on these social media platforms. You really want to engage with them in things that they're interested in. And so, especially with soccer, you have a lot of fun, and soccer is always moving and always current. So you really got to move high pace and learn to flow with the trends, just how soccer is. However, I had the anticipation of, keeping that job, but as you know, 2020 is when COVID hit and everything kind of went haywire. And I unfortunately was not able to keep that internship as a job, and I switched around doing freelance work for different companies, creating the design, either doing just logo types or just brand assets that they need. And eventually I found my way into the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. They had an opening as a communication support specialist, which I eventually put my foot down and said that we need more communication in Spanish markets and not just the English markets. And so I was able to not only engage and promote that work through our Spanish media friends, but also engage in DEAI focused work within the museum in creating things that needed to be translated, such as our wayfinding or different exhibitions that we have permanently that need to be translated. And so I've been kind of instrumental in developing that framework and groundwork for the museum to progress and create something that is accessible in English and Spanish. So that's a lot of where my work aligned within the museum. And it's been a journey. Like I said, I like marketing in general as a whole, because it's so fluid and changing always. And it's never really stagnant and boring. So I love marketing, and that's my jam, and that's what I want to keep doing. But that was my path to where I am now.
Thank you, Aurelio. I'll weigh in here real quick as well. I did have an internship in college. I don't think it was required. It certainly wasn't for credit, but I did get paid. Just happened to be working at a company that my father worked at. They manufactured computerized embroidery machines, of all things. Worked there for 3 summers just doing administrative work. And they knew I was in school studying journalism and advertising, and they gave me an advertising internship one summer. And it was fantastic. They really threw me in. It was a brand new machine that they were doing, that they had just manufactured. So I actually started from the ground up, met with the engineers, figured out what the new machine did, had to get all that technical input, turn that into an ad campaign. It was pretty slick. I think I was 18. You know, my very first ad out the door ran in nationwide trade magazines. I thought that was pretty much the coolest thing ever. But when I graduated, I was married. My husband and I got married in college, and we went out to the Northeast Plains. He was a teacher there. And so I did not know even how to look for a job in the ad industry in rural Colorado, in the agriculture center of Colorado. So I didn't, but the newspaper publisher there, and we're talking small town weekly newspaper, circulation 2300. When she interviewed my husband as a new teacher, she found out I had a journalism degree. So she came knocking on my door. Never thought I'd work for a newspaper, wanted to do advertising. But when you're in a small market like that, like we have a staff of 4 people, you become a jack of all trades. I started selling ads, then designing ads. I was the ad manager, reporter, photographer. I wound up as the managing editor. It wasn't a sexy paper, you know, we're like I said, weekly, circulation 2300. But what I didn't appreciate at the time is it was a very technologically advanced newspaper. We were the first ones online out there, even like compared to our bigger daily papers. Which is crazy at a time to think about when nobody wanted to be on the internet. And she was also a very well-respected publisher when it came to freedom of information. So I was working for somebody truly fantastic, and that just springboarded me into another role. I found a role as a public information officer. So a little bit of public relations, some more journalism, some marketing, some basically jack of all trades in public health. And you just, again, comms department of 1, you have to make everything work. And I was hired in public health at a time when bioterrorism was just coming on. So I think late 2002, my apologies. After 9/11, after the anthrax scares, when smallpox preparedness was coming back. And then crisis and risk communication became a huge focus of my career. And I did that for 13 years. So a lot of all hazards response as well. So fires, floods, tornadoes, you name it. When we moved from that area of the state back to Greeley, because I love Greeley, I took on a marketing role, just marketing, wanted to try just marketing for a while. And it just didn't speak to my heart as much as news did at that time in crisis response. So I went back into crisis response after that, took a job at the state health department 6 weeks before the pandemic hit. And my role was the director of communications for the Division of Disease Control. So I spent the next 18 months pretty much responding to the biggest public health crisis of our generation, I hope. And then took a step back because I needed to, and came back home to UNC. And that's how I landed this job. Again, doing news and PR. It's that whole that whole conglomeration of a little bit of journalism, a little bit of PR, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of everything. I think communications is the best job in the world. All right, I don't see any questions yet, just reminding people that they can ask them, but we'll go ahead and get into the second question. And Jenny, we're going to start with you on this one. Name 1 to 2 practices that you've incorporated into your work that bring you success in your industry.
I would say the top 2 skills that I bring in and that I utilize literally almost on a daily basis. 1 is organizational skills. I cannot stress that enough, because as a producer, I'm leading not only my team of talent that's on air, but I'm leading a crew, 10 to 12 people per show. I'm leading them, telling them which graphics I want, which video I want, where I want us to go to break, what music I want to use. There's so many components that I need to be prepared for. And if I am not organized, and if I don't know what my next step is, nobody else does. So I need to be organized, and I need to be literally a step ahead of everybody, so that I can keep everybody on pace. And I also need to be organized for my talent, because I literally build our show. So I decide what content we're going to talk about. I decide what content we're going to talk about when I talk about, or I tell them when we're going to go to break. And if I don't have my things prepared, my talent cannot be prepared. So I would have to say being organized in my world is 100% the biggest thing for me. Another big trait would, it's kind of funny to say, but I use a lot of psychology skills in my business. That's because I work with so many different types of individuals, and I have to learn how those individuals tick. I need to learn how to work with them. I need to know what works best for them. I work with an array of talent. Some of them like to wing it and ad-lib it, and as a type A personality, that kills me, but I have to adjust to that because they're one heck of an on-air personality and it works for them. So I have to figure out how that works for me. And then other people are very scripted. They need to be literally led from point A to point B to point C to point D. And there's no right or wrong to do that. But if I don't know how each individual, how they respond, it's very hard for me to get the best out of them. So it's amazing how much psychology skills that I use, and also working with a lot of former professional athletes. I also just have to say that I like to treat them like they are just like any other person. You know, I don't hold them to a different standard. I don't also let them get away with things either, because if that's the case, nothing will ever work out. So, and I've worked with a lot of former professional athletes and some pretty high status people. And I can't tell you how many times I've been told, Jenny, I love that you treat me just like the next guy, because I know what my responsibilities are here. And then also they know that I just care about them as a person. And that's one big thing too, is just to let these people know that, you know, I'm here for you. I want to make us look good, but for us to look good, we got to work together. So those are two things that I would say make my days a lot easier if I implement those into my daily routine.
Can't echo the organizational skills enough. All right, Paris.
Yeah, I think for me, they're probably untraditional skills, but I found them extremely valuable. The first one is critical thinking. It's best articulated, I guess, through the example that it came to me. So after I left my big first agency job, like I said earlier, you know, there was a lot of people to do very similar tasks. So your job duties were they were very kind of cut and paste. You know, there wasn't a lot of variability. You kind of came in, did your job, left. And when I went to my next job, which was a much smaller agency, much to kind of Jenny's experience, it required being a jack of all trades and figuring things out. And I had to, you know, realize that people were going to hand deliver my kind of responsibilities to me. I mean, sure, there were certain things that I was responsible for, but a lot of it, you know, wasn't told to me. There wasn't time. And I remember one example where it was a metaphorical fire, but there was a fire, something was happening that needed to be taken care of and nobody was addressing it. And I remember sitting there feeling kind of ineffectual, like, why isn't anybody addressing this one thing that needs to be taken care of? And I realized that I could take this metaphorical bucket of water and like put out the fire myself. And that was going to offer extreme value to the company. And I think it served me well throughout my career in terms of just finding ways to offer value and be an impact player within your organization. Not everything is going to be within your job description, but I think especially at a time where, I mean, we all see what's happening in the world with layoffs and, you know, slower hiring rates. I think it's important to find value when you are in a company. And then the second thing I would say is networking. I think there is a misconception that when you are hired at a place that you are there to serve a purpose. And I think there's a less focus on what you get out of that job and what opportunities exist. You're not there just to do your job. You should take advantage of the amazing people that you get to work with, you know. And so I find myself often setting up coffee, you know, meetings or lunches, or you know, walking by somebody's desk who I want to learn more about their role and what they do. And that served me really well, not just in terms of, you know, when work has to get done, that becomes a much easier process. But also, as I've navigated my career, it's easy to go back to those people who I have good relationships with, and maybe parlay that into working together or kind of other opportunities. So yeah, those two are really critical for me.
Thank you. Mauricio.
Yeah, of course. So a good skill that I've learned, especially here at the museum, since we are in the business of selling not a product, but rather an experience, is think about the message that you're portraying. We're here to, entice and tell people and show people the beauty of science and nature here at the museum, and really building a marketing campaign and strategy around selling a message and an experience, and just showing people that the museum is a place for them, it's a place for the community, and a place for people to learn is vital for us and our success here at the museum. So I think that's very vital for us to keep in mind, not only in any type of marketing, really. I think the message is really important, and really be concise and consider what you want to portray out into the world, because whatever you say out into your marketing strategies is going to say a lot about you and your brand. So really keep that in mind. And also, my second practice that I do is be willing to learn. I work daily on a daily basis with paleontologists, arachnologists, anthropologists, and all of them have so much wonderful things that they have going on. The museum is a place where these individuals do active research, and they push out journal articles, and they publish journal articles yearly, if not twice annually. So it's really vital for you to learn and understand the gist of what they're doing, but also be able to ingest and take in what they're learning and expressing, and make it sound exciting and make it sound ingestible to the general population. Because I have, these arachnologists who talk so many technical terms, and it's super amazing and exciting for me to learn. But I know that that message wouldn't resonate well with the general population, just because it's hard to follow and hard to understand. So it's really taking that message of what they're learning and what they're working on, and bringing it into an experience that people can ingest and follow with. So those are my two practices. And a third one that I have is also have fun with whatever you're doing. That's very important for us. At the end of the day, we're humans, and you need to have fun with your job and have fun with life. So I like to do that. And that's a thing that I always incorporate with my job.
I love that you said never stop learning. That's one of mine, is study what other people do. Never assume that you've got all the right answers. I mean, 30 years into this career, I never assume I still have all the right answers. I'm always looking at what other people are doing, taking some tips and tools from other crisis response, or just what other people are doing in PR, and like kind of putting that back into my own toolbox. I might tweak it a little bit here and there and use it how I think it best benefits me, but always keep learning. I think that one of the other ones for me is to be responsive, and that's just being, to me, a good colleague and networker and pal, friend, whatever. But in communications, you almost always depend on somebody else, whether that's to get the story, support the story, help tell the story, right? And whether it's a coworker, a teammate, somebody in your network, a colleague, the media, the public, be responsive. If people are reaching out to you for something, you never know when you're going to need that connection. And I think you just show value in the fact that, you respect what they need from you at the time, and that you're just an active participant. And I think that people tend to go back to you, and hopefully you can be that connector. So Alton, I'll pass that one on to you as well.
All right. Well, as young folks say, no lies detected. So let me thread all of what we just talked about together. Yes, definitely. Again, the importance of being accessible, but I'm going to continue to thread back through what we talked about earlier as far as internships. Is one of the things that have served me well over the years is proactivity. So that's how I got to move from being a $5 an hour shuttle bus driver to making 6 figures as a communications manager, is by being proactive. So when I was driving the rent-a-car bus, I met a congressman who was mounting a US Senate campaign. And I knocked on the door. I'm a political nobody. I finally got a resume in there. It ended up on the bottom of the pile. And then his campaign staff made some major missteps on a Saturday, and I had a job on a Sunday. And so that started me on my path as a government communicator. And then also because of the ability to work a network, that also spills into, Deanna, what you were talking about, crisis communications. This US Senator, Ben Nighthorse Campbell, switched parties on March 3rd, 1995. It's predated by a couple of years the internet. It predated social media for sure. And so pardon my French and mixed company here, but in those days, instead of tweeting they're going to come kick your ass, they would actually show up at the office when you had mad constituents and stuff. But because of the organizational skills that you all talked about, the other thing that really worked out for me is working for Senator Campbell. I was also on his visiting dignitary detail because I had the contacts, of course, it's pre 9/11, to be able to do things like, hey, I have to go pick up the senator visiting from Texas. So can I leave this car curbside in the pickup area for 20 minutes while I go get it? Stuff you can't do these days, but being able to leverage that kind of connection. And then also that proactivity helped me out during my internships. Again, the radio one where I went from filing to having things on the air. Then at 9 News, my internship was in public affairs, which is fun, long form documentary kind of things. But, I also wanted to learn the totality of the business. I wanted to learn the sports side. So in my downtime, I taught myself how to edit videotape. And so one day, a train hit a truck, pushed it a city block into a lumber yard and set a whole city block on fire. Everyone's dealing with that, and there was no one to edit the sports highlights. So a little intern says, hey, I know how to edit. And next thing you know, as an intern, my highlights are on 9 News 5 nights a week. And then parlayed that at ABC into being able to do, yes, the administrative, but then I got a chance to work night lines and things like that, just because I said I really want to learn. So I am, to your point, Deanna, a lifelong learner. I just completed a certificate at Auburn University in the Elections Center, and now I have a certification in the world of elections administration, which is the highest certification in my profession at age 59. So it is about that lifelong learning. And the other part I always like to talk about is constituent service. And I'm trying to be humble about this, but it's a fact. I'm about 17 years into my current position. When I got my 15-year pin, they, made me take a picture and they put something up on social media, and pretty much every reporter in the market said I'm the best that they've ever dealt with. And the only reason that is because I have a sense of constituent service that I learned working in the United States Senate, understanding that the media has a job to do. And so having been raised by an award-winning newspaper reporter, I know the totality of the business, and that's what makes me effective at what I do. So even though my sportscasting career never got out of the minor leagues, I just went from being a hunter and gatherer of information to a disseminator of information. And 30 years later, here I am.
I love that. This kind of ties into the question that we have in the chat right now, and somebody can feel free to respond to this one. How do you know when it's time to move on to something bigger, that it's time to go up the ladder during the right time and not getting ahead of yourself before you're ready? Anybody want to field that one?
That's a really good question. I would really like to hear everyone else's perspectives, because my code has been to get that foot in the door and then work up from within. So that's how I cobbled together my career. I've only had 2 jobs in 30 years, but I know other people who've been able to really put together a career by going here to here, getting what they need, and then taking the step. So I'd be curious to hear what some of the other panelists may have to say on that.
I can maybe start. I think So I think something that served me well as I evaluate kind of my job satisfaction and role satisfaction is understanding what my priorities are in my career. That list could be something like salary, boss, the work I get to do, the company, maybe how easy it is to matriculate throughout the company, and understand the order of that ranking, right? So sometimes it's changed in the course of my career. Sometimes it's been, I want to make the most money I can make, and I don't really care if I have a crappy boss or the company's not sexy. Sometimes it's been, I want a great boss, and I'll take a pay cut for the opportunity to work with this person. And understanding kind of your priority list, I think, is really important in terms of coming back to it as you are within your role and your job, and understanding does this still align with this list? Does this still align with my values and what I want to do? In terms of like leaving a company, I mean, the last job I was at, I was there for 5 years, and I came on board to build a department, and that was really my task, and to hire people and to create processes. And by the end of that 5 years, I had done that, and I felt like there wasn't a lot left to do besides keep doing what I was doing on a day-to-day level. And that really just didn't provide me nearly the satisfaction that I did when I first started, because that was something I could sink my teeth into. And similarly, with my current job, when I came here, the opportunity was about working at a company where I felt like augmented reality really is the next stage of our technology evolution. And that was a really appealing thing for me to partake in. So I think it's understanding kind of your values, and then and you kind of your goals, and then making sure that you're checking with yourself on a consistent basis.
I think for me, it's kind of a combo of what Alton and Paris were both saying. I've been at Altitude since 2006, so that was technically my first job in the industry. And I have just been very blessed to work for a good company, and I moved up from there. But for me, when I know that I, want to start on a new project or start on a new show or do something different, it's when my day just gets too routine, when it just gets to be almost too easy, I would say. Like, I want a challenge, I want something new presented to me, and that's actually how I started my PR journey with the Broncos. I developed a really good relationship with the current PR department over there because of my job over at Altitude. We worked over at the Broncos quite a bit with one of the shows that I produce. And so just going along with requesting credentials and interviews and all the things that we needed to get from training camp, I got to know the PR department very well. And then there was a job opening, and I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to ask about it because I want something else. I want something new. And I mean, to work for the Denver Broncos is a dream come true for me as well. So I think it was that I could tell that I needed something new. I needed something new in my life. I kind of wanted a little bit of a new challenge, and I had the opportunity, so I took it. And I'm lucky that I still get to do my job at Altitude too. I get to do both of them. So for me, it was just I was ready for something else. I was ready for a little bit more of a challenge. My day was getting too routine, and that's how I knew I was ready to take that next step.
Yeah, I will echo what Jenny said with that. I feel like, life is a risk, so you never know if you're able to do a job if you don't try. So I would always recommend at least give it a try. At least you never know your capabilities until you try something new, right? And so I always recommend doing something that you may not feel comfortable with doing, but you will learn from it. You will learn from it. And in this industry, learning is key for you to know what your capabilities are and where you can move on in the world.
I'm only going to add one last thing to that, and that's trust your network too. If you've got people who are putting opportunities in front of you that have worked with you, they see something in you. So take advantage.
Sorry, I had one more thing to add too, which was just that I think it's important to have a really honest conversation with your managers too, whoever your bosses may be, and set expectations and goal setting with them and build towards what you want to accomplish and what you want to achieve. Because obviously they're the ones that are going to help you kind of ascend the ladder or figure out if this is maybe not the right fit for you. Somebody told me a long time ago that nobody's going to manage your career but yourself. And so I think it's really important to be your self-advocate and lay out your goals with your manager and put together an action plan to support that. And then one or two things will happen. Either you have a great manager who will work towards that with you and help you achieve that, or you'll realize quickly that that's just not possible, or the manager isn't maybe the best manager. And that could also be an indicator that maybe it's time to change things up.
And I agree with that. Just to tack on just real quick with what Paris was saying, with me getting that opportunity with the Broncos, I discussed that opportunity with my managers before I took on that job, because I did not want to burn any bridges with altitude. I loved the position that I was in. I wanted to still be able to do it. So I think it's very important to discuss that. If you're going to take on anything on the side, discuss that with your current managers, because especially if you're happy with the place that you're at, because you don't want them to think that you're trying to leave the company or find a way out. It's just that you want to broaden your horizons. And my bosses were very supportive of that, and they gave me that opportunity. But communication, hence the field that we all work in, communication is huge. And I do think it's so very important.
Great point. Our next question is something that we've really addressed. So let me know if any of you have anything else to offer. What role do work-based learning experiences like internships and apprenticeships have in the hiring process in your industry? And then did you participate as a student? Paris, do you want to add anything to what you've already remarked on to that?
I guess in terms of are they necessary in order to get a job part? I mean, I feel like they're becoming less and less. Well, I don't know. I think. Well, I don't know. Sorry, I'm butchering my addendum. Yeah, I think they become. I think they're harder to. It's unfortunate that I feel like sometimes internships aren't valued as much when we're looking at resumes, not we, but like as an industry. And so I think they are really important. I think we do look at them when we're hiring people, but I think more than anything, I think having just a really good attitude and understanding that, you know, and communicating how you are willing to learn and take initiative, I think is really important. So that's all I'll add. Sorry, that was awkward.
Yeah, I'll hop in on that too, just because one of the values that I think, especially if we're in the government space, internships have is even if you don't land anything where you are, it still helps you build your network. So I'm sitting here looking around my office, and so I've got pictures of like some teams I've worked on. One of my interns ended up becoming the communications person for Commerce City. And then I'm looking over at so long at the end of internship message from another one of my interns, and they went on to become the communications coordinator at Aurora Gateway High School. And so these are people, some of them, like looking at the whiteboard here, haven't interned in 7 years, but we're still in contact. And that's one of the things that really jumped out at me, Jenny, about your remarks earlier is, you know, even though they're gray beards now, I still have 9 news contacts, even though I interned in 85. So Kim Christensen was there. That was back when Tom Green was the weekend sports guy. I can think of some of the people like Manny Sotelo, the photographer, and some of those guys who were still over there. And so once you're known, especially in the world of communications, because it's such a transferable skill, even if where you are doesn't pan out, it still just jumps your network exponentially.
Yeah, you brought up a great point, Alton, that is one of the values that I see in internships is definitely building up those transferable skills. Each internship that you have, you dip your feet into that professional lifestyle in the professional world, and you get to see the wide variety of professions that exist, not only in marketing, but in the industry and different industries as a whole. You know, going into, you know, my current job, I did not know that there was a such thing as a lab preparator or a fossil preparator, or even a digital research lab assistant as career paths. And so you would never know those careers exist if you would have at least tried and gone into that internship and see how there's multiple different positions that you're able to dip in. Not only as general as PR is, there's definitely specifics in PR that you can dip into. Or for example, graphic designers, there's production designers, there's environmental designers, there's typography designers. It's the whole array of professions that you can go into that you would not otherwise know if you haven't tried that internship that you sign up for. And the transferable skills that you get from going into an internship can go across multiple departments, multiple careers, and it's just helpful for you as you build your professionalism to have that experience. You don't want to go in fresh into a career that you may or may not be prepared for. But so it's better to prepare than not be prepared at all.
And I think
And
another
echoing-
thing, oh, sorry, go Alton.
I was just going to say, just echoing something I heard earlier about how you really learn if something's for you or not, because you also want to be honest about your strengths and your liabilities. And in my newsroom internship, I stunk on the assignment desk. It just did not compute for me. And so, I'm on the scanners, there's a fire, they're like, that's like a trash can. That's not anything we're going to send the news crew to. Oh, so I found my niche somewhere else, but being able to be in public affairs, sports, on the desk, etc. That's how I learned, okay, maybe not that path within the business. Maybe I should try this one. Play to your strengths.
And the last thing that I'll add is even, it's a wonderful foundation for networking. I mean, the world of communications is very small once you get into it. It's amazing how small it is. One of the photographers over at 9 News, his brother was an anchor at Channel 2 News. And I had a good relationship with the photographer at 9 that transitioned well for me over at Channel 2. When I was at Channel 2, one of the anchors that was there, 2 of them ended up over at Altitude. Like, you never know where these people are going to show back up in your lives. So I would 100% say, always put your best foot forward, always take any opportunity that comes your way, and keep those relationships going. Because when I walked into Altitude and I saw Joe Brown and Blake Golson both working there, I was like, hey, I know you guys. Like, it's amazing how often your paths are going to recross. So I would just definitely keep that in mind and think about that from day one of those internships, and always, like I said, put your best foot forward, because you never know when you're going to interact with these people again.
All very true. I know we're getting a little bit short on time, so we're going to move on to this question. Murillo, you're going to be first up on this one. Would you be willing to share a difficult lesson you learned throughout your career path, and how might students avoid learning that the hard way?
A difficult lesson. I think a difficult lesson that I've had to face, and I don't know if it's just the Latin pride in me, but I struggle with asking for help. Definitely ask for help. That's something that I've had to learn the hard way, and just being able to suck up my pride and ask for help on how I should communicate this, how I should word certain things, and how I can even ask for help for when it comes to tasks that may take a lot of my time. I'm definitely the type of person that feels like I can tackle and conquer it all. And at times it gets me in a spot where I need to get my deadlines finished, and I need to just be humble and ask for help. So it took a while for me to get there, but it's there now.
I'm going to weigh in real quick, and then we're going to move to the next question since we're pretty short. I'm just going to always say, as somebody who's been in this field a long time, when you work in communications, your work is front and center in front of everybody to consume any way they want, any time they want, almost anymore. You will make mistakes, and it'll be big and they'll be small. You can't avoid that. So there's no advice there. It's going to happen. I would just say that mistakes can be teachable moments, so learn from them. Try not to just focus on them. Move on. Take the nugget for what it is, and just keep going on. Okay, last question. And I guess this one's going to start with me. Can you provide a final word of advice for UNC Bears currently seeking a job in your industry? First, I'm going to say communications is the best job in the world. So if you're getting this degree and you're going into the field, I think it's amazing. We've already said it's everything. You can take it anywhere. It's such a valuable transferable skill. And I would say, don't think of it as a destination ever. I think it's a journey. I think everybody's path here, it's one step at a time. And sometimes those steps are forward and they're small or they're giant. And sometimes they're backwards because you just figured you want to do something different. So I would just say, be open to that journey. And maybe hopefully communicate about something you love, because I think that's what gets you further in your industry. You enjoy the work, but you also enjoy what you're communicating about. And then I'm going to pass the torch now to Alton.
I'm pretty much just going to co-sign with everything that you just said. And yeah, also just stress the importance of understanding that this is a hard skill and a soft skill. We've all come across people who cannot communicate, and there's no shade on them. It's just maybe not their thing. And, a lot of people, like with me, I'm actually a bit of an introvert, believe it or not. But this is a skill that I've developed, the ability to run my mouth, including on live cameras and live TV. It's just something I've cultivated over the years. So yeah, don't be afraid to make mistakes. When you do make mistakes, own up to them. But I really would suggest getting on that internship path, getting on that LinkedIn, hitting us all up. And then your network of 20 becomes a network of 100 and just continues to grow exponentially.
Great advice. Jenny.
Just quickly, I would say stay very, very open-minded and don't pass up on any opportunities. When I graduated from UNC, I thought I was going to be on camera. I wanted to be the sports broadcaster. That's what I graduated with the intention of. And I learned that there's a lot of other facets to the broadcast journalism world. And I was presented with the opportunity to produce at altitude. And at first I did not think that was for me. I did not think I had the personality for it whatsoever. And I learned quickly that being a producer let me do almost all the same things that a lot of the on-air talent get to do. I still get to do interviews. I still get to write. I still get to create stories. There's still so many things that I get to do that's very similar to what on-air talent does. So it was a path that I never thought I would take, but I love the path that I'm on. And if I would have been closed-minded and didn't take the opportunity to produce, I really don't know where I would be. So stay open-minded and don't pass up on any opportunities thrown your way.
Thank you. We should have started with that question. What did you think you were going to do when you graduated? Maurelio, how about you? Advice?
My advice is that, I like to talk and I like to communicate, and it's easier for you to talk and communicate about the things that you love and find interesting. Especially here at the museum, I'm a huge nerd about the discoveries that we have and different exhibitions that we have coming in. And it's easier for me to communicate and talk about it because I obviously find it interesting. And people who you communicate with can see the excitement with you. It can see that you're really passionate about it. And so if you're able to have the opportunity to work as a communicator in a field or business or industry that you already like on your own spare time, it's gonna be beneficial for you and your overall consciousness and soul. It's gonna be fulfilled.
That's great. In Paris.
Okay. I think mine's is about getting creative, right? I think we're at a space where there's so many ways to make yourself stand out. I've seen people get jobs by promoting themselves on TikTok. I've seen people get jobs by putting together a Twitter thread and talking about, their top 20 skills. I've seen people share really poignant stories on LinkedIn, right? And I guess that's partly to Maurelio's point is like, being authentic, I think is a huge commodity these days. It's certainly celebrated more than it ever has been. And I think that's really your secret sauce. So lean into that and get creative with how you find work. It's not just about a job description and applying for it anymore.
Absolutely. So much creativity you can bring to it. I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you to all the panelists. I said at the beginning I would learn as much as anybody on this call, and I think that I did. It was wonderful to get to meet you and at least interact with you for a little bit. So thank you. And Norma, I guess we're transferring it back over to you.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Deanna. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to participate and share industry insight with everyone joining us today. It's always an honor and a pleasure to host fellow Bears, and you all make my job very easy. I am honored to have you all in my network, and to everyone watching, this is our last alumni career panel for this semester, but we already have a lineup for next semester starting in February, and you can find those at www.unco.edu/alumni/careers. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening and go Bears.
Go Bears.
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 Yes, yeah.